Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to talk about the distance and the midpoint formula. Both of these formulas are what I call plug and chug formulas, which means that you're given a specific formula, you plug in the information, the correct information, and out comes your answer. The first thing is distance. Distance, you will actually get a number or a value, and it can only be positive. Sometimes you'll have a radical as an exact answer, and sometimes you will then use your calculator to find out the best estimate by putting it into your calculator, the square root into your calculator, and then rounding it per the instructions. You need 2 points with an x and y coordinates to find the distance. The next one is finding the midpoint between 2 points. That is actually a point. You are going to find a point. It's not a distance. You're actually going to get an x and a y coordinate. It's going to be written with parentheses with a comma in between. And you will actually have an x coordinate and a y coordinate. Okay, so given these 2 points, let's find the distance. Okay, so we're going to use our distance formula. So our distance formula is d equals the square root, and I would write a nice big square root, and it's x2 minus x1, and that's all squared, plus y2 minus y1, and that's all squared, and it's all under the radical sign. What you want to make sure is and understand that x2 and x1, when those are subscripts, when those numbers are down on the bottom next to the variable, that means it's just a name. x2 means that it is the x coordinate of the second point. So we could say this is point 1 and that is point 2, and this is x2 and y2 are here, and x1 and y1 are there. So we plug in the information. We just do it exactly like the formula says. So x2 is 3 minus x1, which is a negative 2, and that whole thing is squared. Be sure to keep all of your parentheses in there. y2 is 4 minus y1 is 2. That whole thing is squared. I would continue to write the square root, the radical, the square root sign throughout each step. 3 minus a negative 2 is 5, and that's squared, plus 4 minus 2, which is 2, and that is squared. The d then is the next step. It's the square root of 5 squared, which is 25, plus this 2 squared, which is 4. And we get d equals the square root of 29. So we can leave it like this. This is an acceptable answer. This is in exact form, or we call it radical form. If your instructions said to round, so if you were asked to round, you might be asked to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, this is where you would use your calculator. If d is the square root of 29, that d would become, in your calculator, it is 5.385, so you would remove your radical sign once you put it into your calculator, and the square root of 29 is, it's really 5.385, and it continues, so rounding it to the nearest tenth would be 5.4, and that would be your answer depending on the instructions for the problem. The next thing we're going to do is calculate the midpoint between these 2 points. The midpoint is the middle, just like what it says. We were going to use our formula that is actually going to give us coordinates. Notice there's parentheses for the coordinates and there's a comma between them. Your formula says that I take x1 plus x2 and divide that by 2. That's like finding the average. And the y coordinate is going to be y1 plus y2, and that will be divided by 2. Again, just making sure you have the right information. x1 and y1 are here, and x2 and y2 are here. And so when we say x1, we say negative 1 plus 3. That's divided by 2, comma, 5 plus 0 divided by 2. when I do the math out, notice I'm still keeping the form that it's a point with an x and a y coordinate. It's 2 divided by 2, comma 5 over 2. You can simplify that one more step. Is 1 comma 5 over 2. You can keep it as 5 over 2, or you can make it into a decimal of 1 comma 2.5. And that is actually the midpoint between the points C and D that we have.